All right. Well, welcome everybody to our webinar on centers of excellence and how to think about centers of excellence. And I think it's going to be a really interesting conversation. The whole topic of COEs is something that we've been talking about collectively in the procurement community for quite a while. And it's certainly getting a lot more conversation today, a lot more visibility, but it's also a very nuanced topic, as we'll talk about today. There's a idea in terms of where it's going, and then there's a potential, a vision that's out there for centers of excellence, but then there's also a reality of what's happening in the market today in terms of what practitioners are doing as well. So we're going to touch on a lot of these different topics. I'll talk a little bit about how we've structured the conversation for the next, gosh, let's just say 45 minutes, and then we'll leave time for Q&A as we go through. But let's do a quick round of introductions. And so with that, actually, let me go in reverse order as you see the slide in front of you. Juan Carlos Hernandez-Castillo from Vertex Pharmaceuticals. Thank you for joining Graham and myself. I'll let you
Thanks for the invitation.
Of yourself.
Thanks for the invitation. And well, my name is Juan Carlos Hernandez-Castillo. I'm director of the Strategic Sourcing Center of Excellence at Vertex. A little of my background: I am born and raised in Mexico City. 15 plus years of experience in sourcing is what I like, is what I love. Always dedicated to this. And I will describe my career as an end-to-end sourcing experience. I started in an equipment refrigerated equipment company back in Mexico. Then I moved to Walmart. I was part of roles like being a sourcing manager at the beginning of my career. Then I started transitioning to roles that involve transformation, procurement transformation, supporting international markets, supporting Latin American markets, supporting UK, supporting China. And then I started shifting towards analytics and center of excellence in the last years. And I ended my career with Walmart during summer last year. And I took this great opportunity at Vertex of shaping and defining the future of our Center of Excellence and the future of our sourcing organization. So happy to be here, and happy to have some provoked thought discussion with you.
Thanks, Juan Carlos. And an interesting time to move, right in the middle of the pandemic.
In the middle of the pandemic, I can tell you it was difficult, but it was a 4-day road trip. Interesting. I moved from Northwest Arkansas, with Walmart is located, to Boston, and I'm just living the dream. You know? It's a little cold, colder than expected, but
I can imagine
everything is going well.
Well, thanks so much for joining us, Juan Carlos. Now, Graham Karasha, everybody knows Graham. But Graham, I'll let you do a quick intro of yourself, please.
Thank you, Omar. So yes, I'm the services director at CASME, which means I'm responsible for all the procurement content of everything that we do on a global basis. So I've been in procurement all of my career, so it's interesting to have different perspectives on supporting the function, which is so held so dearly by me. So that's me.
And I'm Omar Abdullah. I'm the co-founder of the Smart Cube. I take care of our procurement business globally. Used to work in management consulting, started the business about a little over almost 20 years ago, actually. And as I said, based out of Chicago, and look over our procurement work on a global basis. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the agenda. So the way we've structured the conversation today is we're going to structure this in terms of 6 core questions that we will answer. For each of these questions, we have some interesting CASME research and survey work that's being done. So Graham will take us through the survey findings and the, let's call it the CASME member body perspective on each of these questions. Juan Carlos, it'd be great to get your practitioner practical perspectives and what you're seeing. And I'm certainly happy to share what we're seeing across our client base on this issue of COE and on the questions in particular. So the questions that we're going to talk about are: what is the primary role of the COE? Where is the COE headed today in terms of what's being practically done? We'll talk a little bit about how do you implement a successful COE. We'll talk about talent, because that's obviously critical and foundational to how we get this done. How do we ensure that the right talent is engaged in a COE? How do we measure the value of the COE? Because I was going to say it's a $64,000 question, but I think it's more than that. It's probably a $64 million question
It
in
is.
terms of its impact and how do you measure that. And then last but not least, we'll share a set of key takeaways that we think are interesting to think about and know when you're creating successful COE. So those are the 6 questions that we'll talk about today, and that's the structure. So the first question is, what is the primary role of the COE? And to kick this off, instead of us talking, what we thought we'd do is let's put out our poll question for everyone to respond to. So we can just pull up the, there we go. What do you see as the COE's primary role? Please select 3 options from the list that you see there. Is it to act as a strategic consultant to procurement and solve problems? Is it to provide procurement expertise and guidance to the function through improved data? Is it to centralize and standardize strategies, tools, and technologies? Is it to manage tactical procurement processes? Or is it to manage and deliver procurement training and development? Feel free to pick, I think we said pick 3 of those options. We'll give everybody just a few seconds to fill out their answers, and then we will, and then we can talk about it.
Yeah, we said we'll pick 3 because otherwise you'd tick all 5, and that wouldn't be very helpful at all to everyone. And I think it really is thinking what is important to you and your organization. That's why we want to really understand what is the role that is applicable. So what do you see as the primary role? The numbers, you're still responding, so give you a few more seconds just to complete that. The top 3 that are most applicable to your organization. So
we've got a bit of a dead heat here between.
Yeah, and we're keeping everyone in suspense because they can't see these. Only you can see this, Omar, until we actually end the poll.
Really?
So,
This is only for us. Oh, good to know.
This is
it's a tough fight, I can tell you.
Exclusive. So but we're going to share the results. So, and just also to be clear, a copy of the slides and this recording is available to everyone that's joined today.
I have more power than I thought. Interesting.
Yeah, you certainly have. Let's share the results there so that everyone can now see that.
So can everyone see the poll results?
Yes, they can.
Yep. So interesting. So in first place is number 2, provide procurement expertise and guidance to the function through improved data. So data and analytics must bear into that. Number 3, centralize and standardize strategies, tools, and technologies. And then in a little bit of a distant number 3 is act as a strategic consultant to procurement to solve problems, then manage and deliver procurement training and development. And then in last place, managing tactical procurement processes. So I know, Graham, you've got some results. Let me just turn off the sharing. Oh, that should get rid of the poll. There we go. So Graham, you've got some CASME findings on this very question.
We certainly have. So because, I mean, the Centre of Excellence, it's evolved as time has gone on, and it continues to do so. So I think regularly updating what is the role of this function, because like in all of procurement, there are so many buzzwords. You really want to get behind the title. And so, yeah, you could see from the chart here that when we polled the CASME members, it was very much around developing those centralized strategies. Now, in contrast to the poll we've just done, that managing tactical procurement processes was high. So it just shows you yeah, there always can be some surprises. But if you look, we've got that information about providing guidance, essentially providing the support so that procurement can do its job where it makes sense to have a centralized function. And hopefully it's becoming even more of a strategic consultancy. So it's a journey companies are going on.
So,
Exactly.
Juan Carlos, how does this align with kind of your practical experience? What are you seeing?
So what I have seen in Center of Excellence is Center of Excellence are enablers of sourcing strategy development and sourcing strategy in general. And how do we do that? We do it through all the areas that we already talked. So it's technology, data and analytics, process improvement, training, that it's a critical component, and best practice sharing. So really the goal is to maximize value creation and strengthen partnerships with internal stakeholders, with suppliers, and drive consistency and efficiencies. And those are the things that I have seen commonly being applied in Center of Excellence. One thing I will say, and Graham had it right, there's not one size fits all. And really there is a correlation between maturity and structure on each company to what the role of your Center of Excellence will be. And one thing I will say, I'm not a fan of Center of Excellence focusing on tactical activities. I understand sometimes why, but I think it's why this happens. But I truly believe that if we tackle the root cause through technology, through processes, we actually reduce and mitigate tactical activities. So I think it should be more focused in a nutshell, in a strategy, in enabling the sourcing managers to develop better sourcing strategies.
I mean, I think that's a great point. You know, it's I think there's an emerging distinction between what COEs used to be primarily, and I know there's a lot of organizations that are still in that phase, versus kind of this new set of roles. And I think broadly, based on what we saw in the poll and in some of the top elements that we see here, there's a recognition in terms of where it should be. If you look at the past, there's a lot of roles that are more along the lines of librarian or vendor management, just administrative
tasks, repetitive.
You know, firefighter to help solve problems, or just a pure data. I'll use the term data jockey, not a data analyst, not somebody who draws insight, but just corrals data and provides it. And there's still some value and need for that. But I think we're clearly seeing a sense that it's moving in a bit of a different direction, a more progressive direction.
Completely agree. And I think when I hear the term COE, I actually hear evolution and transformation. It comes to my mind. So doing tactical work, it solves, it patches, it doesn't bring a holistic solution. It patches existing problems, but it doesn't bring an entire solution to the problem.
I think if there's one thing that we could do, if we can get everybody who's listening and the wider audience to walk away with equating COEs with evolution and transformation, I think that would be a huge success, because I think that's the seed of where the function is actually going. So I think that makes a lot of sense. So that's the first question that we had in terms of the roles of the COE. Let's talk about where the COE is headed today. And here we've got a couple of pages of some pretty interesting insights that came out of the CASME work, Graham, that you've led. Could you talk us through a little bit of what you've been seeing amongst the CASME member body of what they see as where the role is headed today?
Absolutely. And I think focusing on what the needs of the category manager, what those needs are, is where we were specifically doing different surveys and getting up to sort of 100 organizations to contribute what is going on in their center of excellence and how they see the support. So very much a focus on that internal relationship within procurement, the focus on category management. And as you can see from the chart here, these are the activities that are most helpful to support the category manager. Now, we had some statistics, some percentages behind all of these, but to be honest, it's more getting a flavor of the way that the function supports the category manager rather than sort of the weighting of that. You see, when you look at these, it's very much providing that support to enable the category manager to do their job, whether they're based in a central location, whether they're, well, wherever they are in the world. So it's the tools, it's the support, it's the guidance, case studies, whatever you want to put together, but getting that communicated to category managers so that they can then be more effective. And well, you can read that as well. But guidance, for example, on supply relationship management, equipping the category manager with how it should be done, best practice, those sort of ideas. That's where it makes sense to have that coming from a center of excellence. So it's encouraging. Most of those are quite strategic in terms of the viewpoint of supporting the category manager. So I think we're trying to get more strategic as time goes on, and that's evidenced by the data that's come back.
It's interesting. I'll just add one point. And Juan Carlos, I don't know if you'd agree, but there's a lot of variability, right? So if I look at the base of organizations that I've observed in terms of what they're doing, there are certain COEs that are heavily focused on, as you're facing the slide, the left-hand side, which is more around becoming more efficient and strategic.
Strategy.
There are others that are more focused on innovation. There are others, actually, interestingly, that don't do the top two items that you see there, which is conducting sourcing projects and RFXs or negotiating contracts and getting involved in it. And there are other groups, some call them sourcing operations, some call them sourcing excellence, that are focused on doing that. And negotiating contracts tends to sit with the category folks themselves. So there's a lot of variability here, but I'm quite heartened to see the breadth of roles and capabilities. So Juan Carlos, I don't know if that aligns with your what you're seeing.
It is very aligned, I will say. My experience, and now today, I will say, with COVID-19, we realize how fragile our supply chain is, our supply base, right? And there's a growing interest on developing solid frameworks around supplier. What does that mean? Strengthen supplier relationship management frameworks, performance management, risk management, diversity, sustainability, et cetera, et cetera. So that's I have seen that people is now more interested on that, and that's one of the things that we have to, as COE, we have to adapt to that new need and ensure that we enable those processes effectively. The second area that I always think it's something that COE really impacts the organizations is by enabling a strategy through data and analytics. And I said all this type of analytics, all this set of analytics we have is spend analysis, and it could be sourcing analysis. So doing should cost modeling, dual cost modeling, doing total cost of ownership. So providing all those data and insights to enable sourcing strategy is the second big component. And the one that you mentioned in the top, in the top left, that is conducting sourcing and projects and RFXs. It could come across as it does have a tactical component, that it's a bid execution. But I will say never underestimate the biggest strategic component of competitive bidding, because actually there is an art on understanding what are the right bidding mechanisms, bid preparation, data-driven negotiations, again, going back to enabling with data. And this is a high impact activity for the organization. If organizations get that right, it brings a lot of value to the entire organization. So it is a mix. I'm very aligned with what I see there, and happy to see that there is a strong focus on suppliers, because without them, this won't happen. As simple as that. So this is really spot on. I'm happy to see that responses from people.
So Graham, I think you also found, you had some findings in terms of trends and future trends and where some of the interactions are going, which I think is on the next slide, I believe.
It certainly is, Omar. Let's move that on. Yeah. So absolutely right. And actually just hearing the conversation here, I think the COE should never remain static. I think it is constantly changing depending what's important. I was just thinking what we were talking about in terms of the support for the RFX process. And I know that when organizations have put in new systems, then actually having that central support, education, training, and help really does help. Once e-auctions become business as usual, then that can be removed from the center of excellence and less relevant to the procurement function, and then something else takes its place. So I think there's a constant cycle of activities coming in and out. So that ties in very much with what we're seeing as the future trends. And the comment about sort of what about risk management? Well, we're seeing more and more procurement functions getting more involved with a greater breadth of managing risk. And so, yeah, there's an opportunity there to bring that into the center of excellence if you're rolling out some new system or something specific to help with risk, knowing that eventually it can be then removed. So like all the others, it goes as a bit of a cycle there. We do hear companies talk about getting more and more technology into their procurement, the introduction of automation and AI. It's still early days. In practice, what we're actually seeing are companies introducing chatbots or newer, sort of less expensive technology that's really going to help the stakeholders with their procurement processes. The AI is still way down there in terms of future for most organizations, although procurement's very much about trying to justify and build business cases to go down that route. And as we've been hearing, a common theme at the moment is around data and using data in different ways. And if you're really interested, Omar and I did a great webinar on data not that long ago in terms of data analytics. So check that one out. Quick advert there. But you're right, it's all about using the data to make informed decisions. And I think that will be the role of the Center of Excellence and what procurement's doing for the foreseeable future.
And Juan Carlos, I would imagine that you probably grappled with some of the things that we're seeing here, not only the data elements and the analytics elements, but if I look at, let's say, the third bullet on the left, crisis management, contingency planning, maybe driving greater automation, supplier performance, et cetera, by category and across the company, I'd imagine you were probably right at the sharp end, as the Brits like to say, of that over the last year.
Yeah, we have been focusing a lot on technology and enhancement. We are increasing, or we are constantly looking at ways to enhance the quality of our data, because that's another big problem. The data might be there, but getting the right data in the right tools it's a challenge. So we're heavily focused on that right now. I will say another piece that we're heavily focused is also on training, because there was a boom for technology. We need technology for contract. We need technology for spend analysis. We need technology for that. But you need to keep in mind that not everybody will embrace technology at the same pace. So you have to focus also on training, educating your people. And yes, there is all this massive amount of data. So what are you going to do with it? So how do you extract insights from this information? So there's an educational process that goes hand by hand. So yes, we're working diligently on those things, but my recommendation is don't lose sight of the big picture. You have to acknowledge your current state. You have to understand how people will embrace it and put together plans to ensure that people adopt the technology.
So you've actually set us up perfectly for the next question, which is around how do you implement a successful CoE? And so if we go to the next slide, you've actually talked about a number of things that Graham's going to touch on through the survey work that CASME's done around communications, around change management. You know, one thing, you didn't use these words, but I'm sure that you've seen this, is technology fatigue that people have with so much that's out there to think about. But so Graham, maybe you can talk a little bit about kind of what are you hearing from the CASME world around how to think about the implementation of CoEs.
Okay, so yeah, very briefly, we asked the simple question that how are you looking to implement, or how did you implement a Center of Excellence? And it was really interesting to see the common threads that came from the responses. So putting a business case together to justify it, you clearly need to understand and define, well, what are the roles, the objectives, and the scope of this organization? What is it looking to actually achieve? And then work out how many individuals are going to be part of it. And we're seeing certainly now a growth of having the virtual Center of Excellence, because you can be anywhere in the world. You don't have to all be together in one location. And arguably, it's better because then you've got a much greater selection in terms of talent. And we're coming on to that in a while. But then defining how you're going to operate in terms of the activities and the different tasks that you're going to perform. And I think in terms of getting that to be successful, then it's got to be worthwhile. It's got to have a business case to justify to the business that It's an ongoing process. And we've just said it changes, it goes in a cycle. So you're constantly looking for different skills, different people, different activities for this function to do. But I think getting it defined up front, people were saying that's what you've got to do to justify the resource and build that business case.
Yeah. Juan Carlos, how does this align? I mean, you've dealt with sort of the development and not just working with, but building and growing COEs. How does this align with kind of some of the key issues that you see in implementation?
It is, well, I will say to make it successful, first step is really take the time to assess the maturity of the organization. And by taking the time, I mean, don't go and silo, do your work assessing or do your best thinking on what the maturity of your organization is. Partner with your internal stakeholders and also leverage industry benchmarks to understand where you're located in the spectrum, right? Understand and clearly delineate a value proposal. If you don't have, once you have that current state, if you don't understand or if you don't showcase that the portfolio of services you're going to offer is going to become very ambiguous. So, for instance, we did create here at Vertex a specific value proposal that focuses on analytics, market intelligence, technology, governance and processes, supplier relationships, knowledge management. So that was our start point. And then once you have it, once you identify what exactly that means, because you have to give granularity on what does that mean, support supplier relationship management. There is a component that might be managed by sourcing. There's a component that might be managed by COE. Once you have that clear, then define your priorities. Don't try to boil the ocean. There is going to be, depending the maturity again, there's going to be areas that you have to focus. So we're now focusing, for instance, on processes and governance. We're focusing on communicating our value proposal, and that in 2 or 3 more areas, priorities identify. But you have to put together a sustainable long-term plan, and that will help you. And together with success of metrics for success, right? And that will help you identify in the future step all the skill. How do you resource that? How do you find the right skill set for that COE? Obviously, once you have everything right, you need that sponsorship. Without that sponsorship within the team, it's not going to happen. It's very difficult, and you have to be sure that you communicate the value proposal to everybody in the organization. That will be, to me, are the keys for successful implementation.
You know, that rings so true. One size cannot fit all, right? And I love the fact that you're starting with assessing the maturity of the organization. I think a lot of times, I think folks will get, I guess I'll put it this way, they get carried away by the romance of what a COE could do. And that's great as a long-term vision, but you have to look at the practicality of where you are today and how you can implement and make it a success going forward. And I think you've touched on a lot of really interesting elements that are applicable there, from not only the change management aspects and the communications aspects, but then first setting the strategy and structure, what really makes sense for the organization today, not 5 years from now or 10 years from now.
Exactly.
Let's open this up to a poll. I think, yep, we're gonna have another poll, our second of 3 today. And the question is, what do you consider to be the prime success factors to implementing a successful COE? Please select 2 options that apply. Number 1, clearly define the services to be provided. Number 2, develop clear understanding of COE stakeholders. In other words, what do they need? What do they want? Number 3, to identify the optimal skills that are necessary to deliver results and value. Number 4, to properly define what should be insourced versus outsourced. And number 5, effectively communicate the COE remit and goals. So 5 options, please pick 2. We'll give everybody a few seconds. And as the numbers approach, we're at about 40-ish people so far that have responded, 50. When we get to about 100, that's kind of where we wrapped up last time. So we'll just let everybody respond.
Yeah, give a few seconds. We've got 130 people on the call today. We know we had, it's often the case, we had 300 register, just to put it in perspective, but many of those people are based in Australia and the APAC region, so they want to see the recording rather than watch live. So I guess a quick shout out to anyone that's watching the recording from Australia. Sorry you can't participate in the polls, but hope you find the rest of it of interest.
Indeed. All
I
right.
think we should wrap up there. Let's end the poll and share the results.
All right, so what do we see? 72% said clearly define the services to be provided. Makes sense, Juan Carlos, right aligned with what you talked about. Number 2 was number 5, and number 5 was number 2, which is effectively communicate the COE's remit and goals. So define what you'll be doing and then communicate that clearly to everybody so everyone knows what the role is going to be. And then coming in third place was identify the optimal skills necessary to deliver results and value, skilling and talent, which we are going to talk about in just a second. And then develop a clear understanding of the COE stakeholders. So great. Does that make sense to the Graham and Juan Carlos? Does that align? I think that aligns
very
with
consistent.
what we've been talking about.
Yeah.
Very aligned, I will say.
Yeah, perfect. Well, that leads us nicely on that point to the next point, which is next question, which is how do we ensure that the right talent is engaged in the COE? And there's a lot of things to think about, both in terms of the type of resourcing options, which is this page, and Graham will talk about that in a second, and then the next page, which is going to talk about the skills that are required, and we can maybe pick on a couple of those and talk about kind of what that means. But clearly talent is, at the end of the day, it's great to have technology. It's great to have processes and all of these aspects, but you don't have the right talent involved, I don't think anything goes anywhere, frankly, whether COE or otherwise. So Graham, your thoughts in terms of the findings here.
Yeah, I mean, again, this was a very hot sort of question that we were trying to get as much sort of information about, because you can have an individual and it doesn't necessarily mean that just because they're a great category manager that they'll be good at working at a center of excellence. It's a very different level of engagement with people, different ideas. So in terms of the resourcing for the center of excellence, you need to work out, well, do you want to bring people in? Can they transfer from procurement? Do they need to be experts or generalists? What are they actually going to do, and how are they going to communicate within the function? I would say the main point from all of this was recognizing, back to that statement, not one size fits all. You've got to be having the right person to do the activities that you're wanting, and that's therefore so dependent on getting the right individual with the right skills. And we'll cover that, but I'll let Juan Carlos comment first.
This is such an interesting topic. One thing I will say is, when I think about Center of Excellence and strategic sourcing, at the beginning of my career, I tried to bring a balance and find the perfect skill set that it's in the middle, that has analytical skills and communication skills perfectly well balanced. That doesn't happen. It's like chasing the Holy Grail. So you got to acknowledge that there is, although there are commonalities, there are very different skill sets. So that's something you have to understand. What is exactly what you're looking for? Your value proposal will help you doing that. But something that I would recommend, something that I did when we started here at Vertex, is actually to create a sourcing skill set. And that and to do that, we leverage internal feedback from people, from sourcing professionals, and also take in consideration industry benchmarks from best-in-class organizations, and we identify 25 skills that actually we bucket on 5 different areas, right? Leadership and communication, business skills, sourcing and contracting, analytics, and technical skills. And that gave us a pretty good framework to identify what type of talent are we looking for, together with the value proposal. And that actually gives you, I will say, the right structure, or it simplifies your decision making, and help you actually identify talent in your own organization. Because one thing I must say is, it is way faster to have this structure and look within your organization for that specific talent that going out to market. So you can by having this structure up front, you can actually reduce timelines and execution or the burden of recruiting somebody on the outside, right? So it's that's in my experience how we have find the right persons and the right talent in our organizations.
It's actually, I think, before I comment, maybe the next slide actually touches on some of those points that you just talked about as well. This is so Graham, just so we set the context on this, these are the range of skill sets that folks across the CASME body talked about as being essential. I think there's a lot of good overlap, Juan Carlos,
yes.
what you're saying and what's on this slide that folks are looking for.
Exactly, and that's a lot of these activities are included in our these skills are included in our skill set, and I will say, I mean, when recruiting, don't expect everybody will have everything. It will be perfect, and there will be category knowledge and financial acumen. Focus, again, that's when your value proposal kicks in and it helps you identify, okay, I need a person, this is my priority, I need a person to focus on this, and identify what areas are critical and what areas are teachable. There are going to be things that you can educate people to. There are others that it's more difficult, it's complicated, probably to get there, it will take you more time. So do that exercise. And that will help you spot the right people.
Yeah, it's interesting. Just like, as you said, one size does not fit all in terms of an overall CoE structure. One size does not fit all in terms of the skills and capabilities that you need within an individual, which is why teaming, the right size and level, number of people, but also the right size and caliber of talent is essential. There's, to me, the interesting, all of these points are important, but to me, a couple of interesting ones in here are, I'll give you I guess my perspective over the years is we tend to focus a lot on things like financial business acumen, analytical capabilities, more so these days, although in an evolving sense, but some basic analysis, category knowledge, technical skills, etc. But I think a lot of the real drivers of success in COEs, I mean, you have to have a lot of those capabilities, but things like program and change management, innovation and ideation, soft skills, right? Being able to communicate, being able to talk to people, being able to bring people along in whatever initiative that you're trying to put forward. To me, and those communication abilities, all of these aspects, enthusiasm for the new structure. Graham, I love that. I mean, that's fantastic in terms of what's there. To me, those are the ones that are almost pivotal to not only saying that the COE can do their job, but they're effective in getting things done.
Exactly. And I will add one skill that I don't see there. It really comes down to that. It's problem solving. That to me is a key skill. And if you have somebody that understands and it's able to land the problem and understand how to break it out in order to find the best solution, the best path available, that will actually is a critical skill for a center of excellence. And to your point, communication, soft skills, change management is key. You need you need people that's analytical and understand how to manage data and how to extract data from insights. But those are the type of activities that you will see, or the skills that you will see that are often required in centers of excellence.
Yeah. Graham, any other thoughts you'd add on these points here?
Well, I am just thinking it's a massive challenge to get anyone with a number of those. But equally, I'm sat here thinking, you know what, procurement's suddenly quite an exciting function to be in. If you need all those skills, then the work that you're going to be doing it's so different to what it used to be. And therefore, how could anyone not want to work in procurement? I mean, I think that's, you put that list out to any sort of university or people deciding where they want to choose their career, and I'm sure they say, gosh, yeah, I'd love to work in an environment that requires me to have some of these skills and work in that function. So yeah, we've still got a selling job to do.
Yeah, agreed. And I think the more progressive organizations out there are doing that. I mean, they're attracting people and sharing with them the real value of what it means to be in procurement.
And I will say that when you help, or when you're recruiting and you tell people what sourcing does, what all the impact it has in the organization, how does that how we can influence results in an organization, I only get positive feedback and enthusiasm, and people, it's really engaged once they understand what's the sourcing role, right? But it really comes back to point one: define your portfolio of services, your value proposal, and then you share it with everybody. Even when you're recruiting, you share it, and people will get it and will be enthusiastic to join your organization, right?
Exactly. I think it creates that excitement in terms of the value that can be delivered. Now, on that note of value, let's go to our 5th out of 6 questions, which is, how do you measure the value of the COE? And we're going to kick this one off with our final poll question of the day, of the session today. And that is, how do you measure impact? So please select 2 of the options that are listed here. Is it tangible savings delivered? Is it specialist knowledge delivered to the function? Is it process efficiencies that are delivered? Is it technological change being delivered? Or is it increased centralizations? We have a little typo there, but increased centralization of processes, of tools, technologies, whatever it might be in terms of driving it. So we'll give everybody a few seconds to talk about how they think about impact, and then we'll talk a little bit about that, and then Graham, if you can then share what you're hearing from the CASME audience, I think that would be that'll be great.
Yeah, certainly. Let's just give you a few more seconds to put forward your responses. And of course, it's not just going to be a dollar amount. I mean, we could have another hour discussing the way savings and the way that procurement has to measure
the
savings.
Definition of savings.
Oh my goodness! So let's not.
That could be like 4 hours. Yeah, probably 4 days.
We've only got one option there that's dollar focused. The rest are very much different metrics. So thank you for everyone that's continuing to respond. In the interest of time, I'm going to end the poll there and share the results. We got a clear leader, which is not what I expected. I don't know about you, Omar, but that's different to what I thought it would be.
Yeah, no, not what I expected either. Process efficiencies delivered at 76% was the first and foremost. Second, we had tangible savings delivered. Not entirely surprising that would be there, high up on the list. Number 3 is specialist knowledge delivered to the function, followed by tech change delivered, and then increased centralization. It's interesting. I personally would have thought number 2, specialist knowledge delivered to the function, would have ranked higher in the list. Process efficiencies kind of makes sense to me, but I would have thought number 2 would have ranked a little bit higher. Juan Carlos and Graham, what about both of you? What's your take?
I was leaning towards 2, 3, and 4. I mean, technological change, process efficiencies, specialist knowledge. Yeah. But again, goes back to your value proposal and what are you measuring, right? One of the things that I can tell you in the past is I've been part of organizations that measure savings only. That to me is the easy way to measure value, but it actually contradicts the value proposal of Center of Excellence, because it really, and it can even drive bad behaviors. It can make people focusing on things that are not relevant. And I will say, I would stay away for having savings as a metric of success for the CoE. Strategic sourcing organizations have it already, but I will focus on things like technology enhancements, process improvement, training. How are you in all those things that complement, again, the sourcing strategy, right? In my current goals and objectives, I have a mix of all these different areas.
That's interesting. I think I would agree with that, because my concern, I feel, look, everything ultimately has to translate into real value and impact at some stage. It has to come through. But I agree. I think, one of the things I did a video on COEs a while ago that you can find on the SmartCube website, which talked about one of the issues that I've seen a lot in COEs is the problem of serving he who shouts the loudest. Right? If you have a category leader who comes in and says, look, pick a number, 15% of our total spend, I need the most attention. That may be accurate in many respects, but it may not be accurate. It may not serve the greater good all of the time to serve that one stakeholder or some collection of stakeholders like that. And I think the dollar savings aspects maybe, what's the right way to say this, plays with the purity of what the role of the COE ought to be, which I think, Juan Carlos, is where you're coming from in that statement. So I think that's right. I think I think some might see that as a bit of a provocative statement, but maybe that's right. Maybe you take the dollar savings piece away as a direct benefit of the COE, but it's an ultimate benefit in terms of our category folks are spending less time doing X or
Exactly.
set up this or getting better insights, whatever it might be.
It is a consequence. Savings are a consequence. And the process is so connected that when you have savings for the entire organization, COE and strategic sourcing, usually that one that gets the recognition is going to be a strategic sourcing. And COEs is going to be, it's usually feel like, what's going on? What's happening? I supported this process. I have lived it. And I've been talking in tons of these conversations with my people saying, we know the how behind this, so don't worry about it. But it does create anxiety at times. It's interesting, the dynamics, right? And so I jumped to that conclusion because I think it's the best way to do it. So how are you enabling?
Yeah.
That's the question. That's what COE is doing. Is working on the how are you enabling a strategy. So let's find metrics that clearly help us measure that how.
100%. And so Graham, what are you seeing? I think the next slide we talk a little bit about your findings. What are you seeing in terms of what the CASME folks are saying?
Yeah, first of all, I would totally agree. Let the savings be measured by the category managers. Don't have an internal fight between the COE and the category managers. It's not productive. It's not adding value. So here, in terms of what is the overall value and the benefit of the Center of Excellence, and certainly here, CASME members were saying it's all about that efficiency through standardization of the processes. So not that it needs to be done centrally, but just in a consistent way, whether you're operating locally, regionally, or globally. So that centralization is not about doing it in one place, it's doing it in a consistent way that works well. So yeah, return on investment, it is a challenge. It's hard if you do need to do quantitative information or reporting. Try not to get too hung up on it. I think that would be the main message, that really it's just a good thing to be doing, and you can use some other measurements to justify the business case and investment.
So the key takeaway for the 100+ people who are listening, when you go back to your organizations and talk about objectives and measuring value, just tell them Juan Carlos said, take dollar savings off the table.
Take them out.
Take it out, yeah.
Which, by the way, I 100% agree with. I think that's absolutely right. And it preserves the purity of what we're trying to get done when we think about COEs. Okay, so we're running up on time, 10 minutes left. So let's go through the last piece. So the last piece last question is around what are the key takeaways for when creating a successful COE? And I think we've touched on all of this throughout the course of this conversation. So maybe what I'll do is let me run through this list and then open it up to Graham and Juan Carlos for you to add to this. And then we can open it up in the few minutes that we've got left for any questions. And we'll, of course, pick up questions separately as well. So 8-point checklist to ensure success in your COE journey. Number 1, ensure clear executive sponsorship and support for the COE. We've heard that, Juan Carlos, you talked about this right at the outset, that we have to have leadership commitment, otherwise it's not going anywhere. Number 2, position the COE as the A team to the category leadership and the rest of the procurement organization. Don't position it as a side function that just is there to help you with data or as a librarian or whatever it might be. It has a material prime role. Number 3, budget properly for the COE to ensure that they have the right tools and technologies to do a great job. And that doesn't mean endless budgets or over budgeting, but it's just doing the right task. And it'll relate to a couple of points we're going to bring up in 6 and 7 around planning, but budget properly for it, as opposed to just putting people in the role and then not giving them any resources beyond human resources to get the work done. Number 4, recruit the right level and quality of people to the team. So this is to do with, and number 5, by the way, is staff to the right level and number of skills that are needed. So 2 parts of the same equation: have the right number of people in the team, but also have the right quality of individuals and a mix of capabilities. And again, as we talked about earlier, as Juan Carlos, as you said, one size cannot fit all. You can't have one person with all the skills. So you need a multitude of those capabilities to be able to deliver. Number 6, develop long-term as well as short-term plans for the COE. It's great having a long-term vision of where you want to go, but understand the organizational maturity and where can you start today. And in line with that, number 7, tailor the COE's charter to ensure that the prime focus areas for the given year, the next several quarters, are aligned to what they can actually deliver. That sets them up for success. As in, we want to do all of these things, but we're starting here, and we're going to do those really well. We're going to tell you we do those really well. And number 8, capture their feedback as we do that in terms of performance of the COE, the team members, their contribution, etc. And then we can iterate going forward. And I think that sets folks up for success. Juan Carlos, Graham, anything you'd add to that?
I think it summarizes pretty well. I would say it goes back to understanding the maturity of the organization, developing your value proposal. That once you have that value proposal, something I will recommend for people that it's setting up centers of excellence, identify some quick wins so you can showcase your value. So that's critical. If you identify 2, 3 projects, if your leader is still hesitant about what is the value of a COE, identify those projects and you can showcase value while building your strategy. So that's one of the things that I will do. Then you go after your sponsorship and buy-in. And most importantly, it's your leadership sponsorship, but also you have to gain buy-in from everybody within sourcing. So the ones that are going to make it happen are the sourcing managers, are the strategic sourcing team. They're the ones that buy or not. It's not about leadership only. And when it comes to your proposal, make it actionable and make it sustainable. And Graham mentioned that it has to be dynamic. You have to review it periodically. Yeah. It's not written in stone, it changes constantly, and COEs should adapt as the organization evolves. And the last one that I think is, to me, the most important, never, ever underestimate people development.
100%.
What goes back? Center of excellence goes back to center of excellence in transformation equals change management. Do not assume everybody, because you put a center of excellence, everybody will get it.
Yeah.
There is a need for a training framework that complements this transformation. So that's critical, and that has been my key takeaways when every time I start a journey like this.
Yep, fantastic. Graham, I know you're going to jump to questions. Before you do, let me throw out a little bit of a teaser and a plug here. So I mentioned at the Smart Cube, we have this video series called Inside Procurement. I did one on centers of excellence, which I think is interesting because it aligns with a lot of what we're saying here. But if this 8-point checklist is coming from the standpoint of a leader within the organization. If you in the audience are a COE member, I've included at the end of that video 5 things that you should be thinking about doing yourself, as opposed to waiting for someone else to come in. One of them are things like, for example, have you developed tailored but reusable strategic frameworks for category teams to drive deeper strategy execution? Have you set up performance mechanisms, dashboards, KPI reports that help provide better visibility into functions and categories and performance? So there's a list of 5 things that you can think about. So this is not just about, hey, I need my leadership to do all of these things, but there are some things you can take on yourself as a COE member and go. So not to plug myself, but I just did. Please do check out that video on the SmartCube website.
Hang on over there. You're promoting your video. You haven't mentioned your book either. Your book on risk. But,
I'm waiting for the Q&A to do that. And
I think we should go to questions, and we've got far more than we can possibly cope with in the 5 minutes that we've got left. But we'll see how we can get on with that. Let's stop sharing there so you can see us. And people have been ranking the questions too, which so let's just
we have some fantastic questions here, Graham, Omar and Juan Carlos. So on the most popular ones that people have just voted in the last couple of minutes is one regarding talent. On the talent topic, everywhere I've worked, the COE is last on the procurement hierarchy for resourcing. The contracting category team always comes first, and I struggle to get the needed headcount to support the business. I'd really like to better understand what you typically see with COE roles and size.
So I will say something. It is common to have that challenge, but I will say don't think about resourcing COE only with people resources. They're in terms of just hiring somebody new. Currently, we are working on 5 strong initiatives at the company where we decided actually to resource with people from the strategic sourcing organization. That way, we ensure everybody gets involved in our journey, and there's knowledge cross-pollination. So there are, all this to say, there are arguments to get resources you needed. Definitely, the value proposal is one, and having specific roles and responsibilities is critical to ensure that, because you can say supplier relationship management, but that's broad. You have to go to the level of roles and responsibilities. But if that doesn't work, well, then what is plan B? How can I leverage the existing resources? How can I borrow some resources from other teams within sourcing? And we can together build a process, or we can partner with some other areas to get some borrow resources to help us get something done. I have seen different approaches to it. So I will say that to me is the first argument is value proposal with clear roles and responsibilities. But if that doesn't work for you, then go and ask for a plan B. So if you can't resources, you can find the resources. What else is available? How can you enable, or how can you support the COE?
Juan Carlos, would you agree? I think implicit in that question is the need for the leadership, CPO, head of procurement, however you want to term that, to buy into the idea of the COE and the value of the COE. Because if that's not there,
absolutely. If that is not there, it doesn't work. So that's why the value proposal it has to be in place, because you don't have to assume that because an organization is asking for a center of excellence, it means what a sector, it perfectly understands what a center of excellence should do.
Yeah.
So you are the one that should set up that and should prepare that information. And once you have it, then that brings clarity. And then you narrow it to roles and responsibilities, and that makes it easier. I'm not saying it's always successful, because there's going to be always budget constraints, but I'm telling you, it gets you to a different level, takes the discussion to the next level.
100%. I think we have like a minute left. We might be able to do one more question. We'll try and pick up the rest of them separately.
You know what, Omar, I just think, given that we got to finish on time, we can do a blog between us that covers all the other points. I think rather than rush it and do a poor job of it, because we literally are out of time. But thank you for everyone attending this session today. Juan Carlos, thank you so much for your practitioner insights. And well, it's always great chatting with you, Omar, as we do. And it was great to see you in person last week. So I think all that remains to say is thank you all for attending. There will be the recording and the slides available. But until the next webinar that we do from CASME team and from the SmartCube team, thank you all and goodbye for now.
Thanks for the invitation.
Thanks, everyone.
Take care. Bye-bye.